President Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has faced criticism over widely disseminated reports that he foreclosed on an elderly woman over a 27-cent mistake. But it turns out that there may be quite a bit more reality to that story. Trace Gallagher has the fact check for us from our West Coast newsroom tonight. Trace, what did you find out about this?
Well, you know, Martha, Mark Twain once said a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth puts on its shoes, but you don't have to tell that to Treasury Secretary nominee Steven Mnuchin, because he really got lambasted across the country over something that clearly was not true. It began from a Politico article that reads in part, quoting here, "One West, a bank Steven Mnuchin and his partners established during the collapse, has taken steady fire from regulators and consumer advocates for a myriad failures ever since. In Florida, the company foreclosed on a 90-year-old woman after a 27-cent payment error." Sure enough, the story was picked up by the New York Times, Vanity Fair, Huffington Post, CBS, MSNBC, and many others. In fact, if you Google Mnuchin 27 cents, you get tens of thousands of results. And it might have gotten worse if not for Ted Frank. He's an attorney who runs the Center for Class Action Fairness. Frank did some research and proved that not only did Steven Mnuchin's company not have anything to do with the 90-year-old woman's home, the home was never foreclosed upon. In fact, the bank involved is having to pay the woman for her troubles. And while the untrue story stirred up an audible roar across the country, the correction was largely taciturn. A line at the very bottom reading, and I'm quoting, "At the time the second foreclosure was filed in 2016, Mnuchin had sold his stake in One West and was on the board of CIT," which really is kind of a complicated way of saying, yep, we kind of screwed that one up. Martha.
Wow, unbelievable. Trace, thank you very much. So here to discuss this is a man who's well aware of what it's like to be part of the White House administration, having served President George H.W. Bush, former White House Chief of Staff, John Sununu. Good to have you here tonight, Governor. Welcome to the program.
Nice to be here, Martha. Thank you.
So when you listen to this story, it's just one example for Steve Mnuchin, because we have seen so many of these cabinet nominees raked over the coals. But this story, you know, sort of dubbed him the foreclosure king. And he went before that panel and he said, you know, what we really did was try to help people work some of those loans out and keep them in their homes.
Look, what prompts the press to do this is a couple of things. Number one, a desire to be first, even if they're not correct, and they're willing to do that. And number two, a desire to hurt the Trump administration and his nominees. And the third point, I think, is what people often forget: the press is stupid. Can you imagine believing that a 90-year-old woman with a 27-cent debt was foreclosed on? I mean, it just boggles the mind. You would think that somebody in that court would reach into the, if it even came to the court, somebody in the court would certainly reach in their pocket and put the money on the table. For the New York Times, amongst those that you talked about, to have printed that, shame on them. They have seen their best days long, long ago.
Oh, there's so much discussion about fake news and, you know, not checking the facts in a story like that that has branded him in that way is a good place to start. I want to talk to you also